5 unbelievable deep woods horror stories that will haunt your fall nights. I never should have opened that door. The chill hit me like a wall of ice, freezing my breath in the air. I stood there, heart pounding, my hands trembling. It was supposed to be just another quiet evening at my cabin, a reprieve from the chaos of life. Yet, something felt wrong. Very wrong. Outside, shadows danced beneath the gnarled trees, twisted and contorted by the whispers of the wind. The night was thick with an eerie stillness, as if the woods were holding their breath. I could almost smell the damp earth, the decay of fallen leaves, and something else, something metallic, like old blood. Fear crept in like a slow poison. It prickled at the back of my neck and drummed against my chest. The darkened room felt claustrophobic, filled with an intangible weight. I stepped lightly, barely making a sound. With each heartbeat, I searched for comfort in familiar sights, my worn-out couch, the flickering flame of a candle casting long, twitching shadows. Just as I thought I could breathe again, a sharp noise shattered the silence, a thud from somewhere outside, heavy and deliberate, tension twisted in my gut. I glanced toward the window, peering into the abyss of night. The fog rolled in thick, swallowing every trace of light. Another thud, louder this time, sent a tremor through my body. A second later, someone moved in the shadows beyond my porch. I could see the outline of a figure, tall and unnaturally still. My heart raced. Who would be out there, this late? A cold sweat trickled down my back. As I shifted to grab my phone, I heard it again. A whisper that curled around my ears, drawing closer. It was a name, all too familiar, twisted and warped into a mere breath. Help! A shiver shot through me. I froze. The world outside had gone quiet again, but I could feel it now, a pulsating dread enveloping me like a shroud. Suddenly, my door creaked open. I hadn't touched it. It swung inward, revealing that void beyond, endless and hungry. My breath hitched, a lump forming in my throat. The figure stepped forward, and I was paralyzed. The candle's flicker illuminated their face for just a moment, a twisted mask of anguish and fury. A scream clawed its way from my throat, then silence. What came next? The world snapped into darkness as the door slammed shut behind me. I didn't know what waited in that night, but I knew I was not alone. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air turned thick, suffocatingly so, as I stood in that darkened room, heart pounding like a wild drum. Shadows moved at the edges of my vision, but as I turned my head, all I found was darkness, stretching endlessly. The candle behind me flickered erratically, as if sensing the dread that suffocated the air. As the figure materialized before me once more, I could see its features twisted into an expression of raw terror, eyes wide but blazing, skin pulled too taut, no longer simply a manifestation of fear, but a conduit for something far more sinister. The name continued to echo in my mind, an incantation that twisted reality itself. Help! It was my sister's voice, a haunting melody of desperation tangled in a symphony of horror. I stumbled backward, my eyes locked onto the figure, its face a gruesome canvas of agony. I wanted to scream again, to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Memories of her flooded my thoughts, slaughter, warmth, then terror when she had disappeared. Is it you? I croaked, my voice barely a whisper, choking with longing and disbelief. The figure tilted its head, a grotesque mimicry of understanding. Then, it opened its mouth, but the words that came forth weren't hers. They were guttural, distorted, a discordant chorus rising from depths unfathomable. You should not have come back, it rasped, a gravelly warning that seeped into my bones, chilling me to the core. With trepidation, I summoned whatever courage I could muster. "Where is she?" I shouted, my voice cracking. "What have you done?" The flickering candle cast erratic shadows, the flames seeming to dance in fear of what was unraveling before me. The figure shuddered as my anger pierced its veil of dread. It took a step closer, its presence heavy and oppressive. Yet just as I thought I could breathe, the door behind me creaked, one more time, louder this time, a horrid greeting. I turned quickly, instinctively, but it was only the wind, or so I thought. But then, a feathery whisper, sweeter, more alluring, "You shouldn't have opened that door." The voice floated around the room, a seductive caress that wormed its way into my thoughts, wrapping tendrils around my sanity. "Come be with us." It was a song tugging at the seams of my mind, a promise dipped in sorrow. I recognized it from my dreams, the cursed lullaby that always shadowed my slumber. "Get away." I screamed, the words tearing free from within me, shaking the very foundations of reality. But the figure merely stood there, lips twitching into a semblance of a smile, uncanny and distorted. The wind outside howled, a warning wrapped in despair, and then it hit me, an omnipresent gaze, watching, creeping closer from every darkened corner. The walls of the cabin twisted, and I could nearly hear them whisper, sharing secrets I was not meant to know. The candle's flame sputtered, dying as the cold seeped into my bones. Suddenly, an ear-piercing shriek erupted from the forest, slicing through the tension like a knife unsheathing darkness. A figure burst from the shadows outside there in the pitch black, beyond the glass. It was another face. A familiar face, distorted between fear and rage, and I realized it was my sister, clawing at the air, mouth open in silent horror. The candle extinguished completely, plunging me into total darkness. The fading glimmer of sanity flickered away like a dying ember. I could feel the figures closing in on me, their whispers rising to a haunting crescendo, and then I felt a hand gripped my wrist, cold and trembling, pulling me toward the door. No. I screamed, but the darkness was too thick, too insistent. I was being drawn out, into the terrible night, a sacrifice to whatever awaited beyond those walls. As the door splintered open, I saw them, eyes, countless eyes glowing in the night, each reflecting hunger, despair, and a bottomless void that promised never-ending terror. I took one last ragged breath before the darkness swallowed me whole, and I felt the grip slacken, like the last vestiges of hope fading away. And in my final moment of clarity, a dreadful realization dawned upon me. The woods never let go then, an overwhelming silence. In the suffocating embrace of the inky blackness, a cold realization settled over me like a shroud. I had been drawn into something ancient, something sinister. The silence that enveloped me was heavy, suffocating, as if the very air were laced with malice. For an eternity, I stood suspended in the abyss, the weight of unseen eyes boring into my back. The whispering voices began anew, swirling like autumn leaves caught in an unrelenting gale, weaving tales of despair and torment that echoed deep inside my mind. "Find us, join us," they coaxed, a murmur that slithered into my thoughts, igniting tendrils of fear that wrapped around my heart. The sensation of cold fingers traced down my spine, chilling me to my very core, as if the darkness itself were tasting my fear. I fought against the whispers that sang my sister's name, old memories intertwined with horror flooding over me. Their words turned sinister, their cadence a haunting lullaby that blossomed despair within me, coating my mind in shadows. Just when I thought I'd succumb to the darkness, a flicker of light pierced through, a call from the familiar depths of my memories. I was clawing through the fog of dread, screaming her name into the void. And then, "Sister." My voice echoed, desperate, resounding hopelessly against the oppressive silence that followed, but it was met only with a shuddering breath in return. The air thickened again, becoming a miasma of sorrow laced with raw terror, a tangible presence that slithered closer. The walls of the cabin breathed, pulsing with life and malevolence, as shadows crept forth, elongating into grotesque shapes that snaked along the floor. They seemed to reach for me, fingers turning to claws, grasping at the fabric of my essence. "Help," another voice echoed, so faint yet so deeply familiar. It pulled at my heartstrings, the melody and echo of her laughter, me sister's essence distorted into a haunting plea. The sepulchral tone caressed the frail strands of hope woven into my spirit, unraveling them away, whispering promises of release from suffering. Instinct drove me forward. I stumbled, blindly reaching into the darkness, searching for the source, for her, the last glimmer of sanity tethering me to the living. Each step was more treacherous than the last. Crawling instincts screamed to stop, to turn back, yet the wailing chorus urged me on. I would not abandon her. A tremor surged through the earth beneath me, vibrating with a low growl, reverberating through my bones as I pressed against a door half buried in shadows. It appeared suddenly, an ancient wooden door, warped and crooked, almost alive. Heart racing, I pushed against the splintering wood, the mysterious glow flickering tantalizingly through the cracks. With a final, deafening creak, the door swung open, flinging me into a world beyond comprehension. What lay before me was a scene ripped from nightmares. A vast expanse of twisted trees stretched into the abyss, their gnarled branches clawing at the indigo sky, but all that met my gaze were hollow sockets where eyes should have been. The gloaming light suffused the area with an eerie pallor that danced with shadows, and indistinct forms flitted between the trees, their movements unnatural, as if reality bent to accommodate them. Help! The voice rose again, punctuated by shrieks of sorrow that echoed in the distance, drifting out of sight yet drawing me forward, deeper into the gnawing darkness of the woods. My legs moved almost of their own accord, weaving through the oppressive underbrush. Grotesque faces twisted in frenzied agony flickered just beyond my line of sight. The woods felt alive, prickling with unseen malice, threatening to swirl in upon me. Suddenly, my feet tripped on something that felt unsettlingly soft and pulsing. I looked down through the dim haze and gasped. A body lay half buried, misshapen and decrepit, with impossibly wide eyes staring into eternity, their expression one of horror. I stumbled back, but the forest closed around me, whispering my Fatia promise echoed back to me, join us in this eternal night. The shadows scoffed, laughter dripping from the darkness that threatened to enshroud me. I took a deep breath, the stench of decay filling my lungs, determination blazing in my chest. Where are you? I cried out, voice trembling against all the terror surrounding me. A rustle answered, a fleeting whisper of comfort hidden deeper amongst the wretched branches. At that moment, a figure burst from the thicket beside Mimi's sister. Her eyes glowed with feverish intensity, her hair wild, tangled as if it bore the weight of countless horrors. Run! She screamed, a ferocity to her words that quickened my heart, masking the sorrow beneath. They're coming for you. The breath left me, panic rooted deep within my gut as new shapes bounded toward us through the underbrush, malevolent silhouettes steeped in hatred. I turned instinctively, adrenaline fueling my legs, but what I saw behind me stopped me. Called an unearthly swarm of empty eyes, shrieking in a cacophony of sound that rippled with insanity. A flurry of movement surged at us, a maelstrom of darkness swelling with a life of its own, filling the air with a cloying dread. Would it be the woods or the shadows that claimed me first? The answer fled just as I'd grasped it, swallowed by the relentless night. I felt a claw grasp my shoulder, turning me toward the swarming horror, and as my screams intertwined with the wails of those tortured souls, reality faded into the lurching darkness. Then, everything went silent once more. I stood there, suspended in a void between worlds, feeling the clawing grasp of oblivion tighten around me. The sheer weight of the darkness pinned my heart, breath stalling in my lungs as the wailing ceased, leaving only a strangled silence cascading like a shroud over the nightmarish woods. Anxiety coursed through my veins, an electric pulse warning me of the perils surrounding my very existence. Shadows flickered at the corners of my vision, grotesque shapes darting behind trees and sullen underbrush, as if waiting with bated breath for the moment I would tiptoe into their reach. Then, as if summoned by that silence, the cacophony roared back to life. This time it was worse voices overlapping in a maddening symphony of despair. They called out in Russian and French, mingling with piercing screams echoing in the settling darkness. Every sordid cry scraped against my sanity. Among them, unmistakably, I heard my sister's voice again, laced with a terror that reverberated in my bones. This way! This way! Instinctively, I turned in the direction she had beckoned, scrambling to regain my bearings as fragments of the previous moments flooded back her wild eyes, the ferocity in her warning, the grasping void behind me that hungered for my soul. And yet, within me burned an eerily guided sense that if I could just reach her, the battered thread of hope would finally weave its way through this brutal tapestry of horrors. Ahead of me lay the moonlight-drenched path, but before I could take a step, the oppressive aura tightened like a noose around my thoughts, whispering twisted tales of surrender. "Join us, she can't save you," the voices taunted. "You could have peace, eternal, here in the woods." Shaking my head fiercely, I pressed on, ears ringing with residual echoes of unending pain. I plunged deeper into the thicket, the shards of moonlight quivering and distorting around me, casting erratic silhouettes that danced like demons in the maddening gloom. If these trees could talk, what whispered horrors would spill forth? What ancient evils lay hidden beneath the gnarled roots and shredded foliage? There, behind a tangle of thorns and blackened soil, I spotted movement, a flash of white against the dark. My heart surged with hope, yet alongside it coiled an insidious doubt. Was it truly her? Or but another trick of the malevolent woods, a facsimile of the person I desperately sought? With trembling resolve, I pushed aside the underbrush and stumbled into a clearing bathed in an unsettling silver light. In its center, perched was a demonic haze surrounding a broken, statue-like figure half hidden beneath a weather-worn cloak. Its shape twisted and morphed as shadows enfolded it, a grotesque idol shaped from misery. It bore a chilling resemblance to someone I had once known, a cruel parody of humanity. Frozen with dread, I noticed my sister kneeling beside it, humming a sorrowful tune that struck deep chords within me. "No!" I choked out, a scream clawing its way into the atmosphere as something deep inside me split wide. "Don't listen," her head snapped up, her eyes now pooling with darkness, twin voids absorbing all light. "You shouldn't have come. They'll take you too, just like me." What she had become, her features distorting like fluid glass, ignited a primal fear. Within that moment, I understood, the forest had claimed her, nurtured her despair like its own, slowly entwining her essence into the depths of its ancient hunger. "Run!" she commanded once more, but it emerged as a rasp, laced with anguish, and then twisted into wails sharp and piercing. Behind me, the wretched chorus surged like a malevolent tide, broiling shadows reforming into nightmarish figures. Faces emerged, pale and screaming, their mouths moving in unison with the horrific symphony that ensnared my senses. "No! No!" I wailed, clawing at the ground, frantic as tendrils of darkness writhed toward me. The figures lunged, limbs stretched into monstrous distortions, beckoning. I was caught in their insatiable orbit. Something grasped at my ankle, I fell, and as I turned to fight, the last thing I glimpsed was my sister reaching out, a titan of sorrow trapped in the shifting void. The world around me disintegrated, spun into chaos, as laughter surged from the shadows, an endless, horrifying refrain. Join us, then." A snap of bone echoed in my ears as the ground quaked beneath me. I didn't know if it was their triumphant roar or the sound of fate snapping me like a twig. I felt myself being dragged, sucked backward into the depths of this hellish dimension, the cool breath of eternity brushing against my skin. And just as despair wrote its final line, my scream was swallowed by the darkness. Silence fell once more, but in that suffocating void, I heard a whisper, a fractal echo of laughter that filled the air, threading itself through the abyss, ready for the next soul to turn its gaze into the void. And the ground beneath me shifted, a lullaby of despair unfurling into stillness. What awaited me beneath the weight of this unseen horror remained cloaked in uncertainty, but already I felt the stirring tang of life entwined with decay once more. "Will you join the hunt?" the voice teased, poised at the precipice of my consciousness as the darkness closed in, the shadows thickening like a growing storm. The coldness seeped through the void, an icy grip that clawed at the sinews of my thoughts. I could feel the sinister pulse of the forest around me, thrumming like a heartbeat as shadows flickered and flared, morphing into grotesque silhouettes that played at the edges of my sight, ever shifting, relentless in their pursuit. Each breath I took felt heavy with an impending doom, weighed down further by the chilling specter of my sister's voice, now nothing more than a fragmented echo that ricocheted through the dense underbrush of my mind. "Will you join the hunt?" The words twisted in my ears, wrenching remnants of resolve still clinging to my sanity. As I fought to gain my bearings, a quaking earth whispered promises of despair. The silence around me seemed to hold its breath, waiting, yearning for me to venture deeper into the abyss it so dearly craved. Each fleeting moment fractured my connection to the world I had known, and a sense of urgency tore at my chest. Time wouldn't wait. I stumbled through the dim foliage, my heart hammering against my ribs as I fought against the burgeoning tide of panic. I needed to find her, to pull her back from the maw of this unrelenting nightmare. "Stay strong," I murmured to myself, desperation punctuating every syllable as I pressed onward. Then, the ground beneath me trembled once more as a chorus of howling wind filled the air, swirling leaves and debris into a vortex of chaos. Through the maelstrom, a semblance of clarity emerged, a wretched figure shrouded in brambles, its gaunt visage glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. It stood on the periphery of my awareness, neither fully solid nor entirely ephemeral, a distorted spectre trapped between worlds. "Do you seek her?" It rasped, voice dripping with malice. The spectre's hollow eyes bored into mine, the emptiness within them endless, devoid of any compassion or hope, a gaping maw painted with the laughter of those lost to the shadows. "The forest nourishes desires. It hungers for souls, yours and hers. Join the feast, lay bare your wishes, and we shall make them flesh. Let her go." I screamed, rage igniting within me as I snarled at the spectre, guilt twisting my insides into knots. My voice carried an urgent plea laced with defiance, yet as the words escaped my lips, shadows curled closer, enveloping me with insidious whispers that echoed like a haunting lullaby. "Her freedom is a price are you willing to pay? What lies in the depths of your heart?" The spectre reached a skeletal hand toward me, and for a moment, I was paralyzed by uncertainty. Would I sacrifice my own essence for her? Or would the weight of my desire fracture me further? Before I could respond, the ground quaked violently, a surge of energy shattering my fragile focus. The trees twisted and writhed, their gnarled branches reaching out like fingers, curling in grotesque invitations, eager to embrace me. I turned to flee, the spectre's laughter clawing at my back, each cackle pulling me further into despair. Fumbling through the now chaotic glade, I desperately reached for any semblance of light or hope. Then, through the mayhem, a flicker of movement caught my eye. It was her, my sister. She stood not far from the spectre, her once bright demeanor faded, now shrouded in a cloak of shadow. "Please, come back." I cried out toward her, but the wind stole my voice, carrying it futilely into the depths. Her expression twisted fear mixed with a disheartening serenity, as if she teetered on the edge of understanding the impossible decision laid before us. "Leave the woods," she shouted, the words brushing against the edge of despair. "They will take you, just run." Her tone cracked, shattering within the confines of the forest that clutched tightly to her form as if it were a lifeline. I could see the shadows coiling around her, drawing her in with their seductive promise of comfort and eternal rest. No. My resolve surged and rage flared within me. I wouldn't lose her again. Fight it. Fight them. As I took a step forward, the shadows writhed in response, tension building as they threatened to suffocate the light around us. An unearthly howl erupted, tearing through the air like shards of glass, and something ancient awoke within the earth, a creature born from the very heart of the forest itself. It charged forth like a molten shadow, oozing tendrils of darkness that snaked toward both of us, the stench of decay wafting through the air. My heart plummeted, and panic coursed through my veins as I met my sister's eyes one last time, searching for understanding amidst the chaos. Then, as the creature lunged, a scream exploded from her throat, cutting through the night like crashing thunder, a final cry for freedom amid the umbral shroud. The ground beneath me split open, a gaping maw of despair swelling wide, and in that treacherous moment, everything in my world fractured. "Join us, join the hunt," the voices sang sweetly, and the darkness began to pull me into its embrace. My sister was lost to the shadows, and now whispers of the forest clawed at my very being. Just as I felt the tendrils brush against my skin, a spark of clarity ignited within me. Coursing through my veins was the undeniable will to fight, to break free, even as despair whispered sweetly in my ear. With every ounce of strength, I struggled against the pull, desperately trying to tear myself away from the encroaching darkness, but in that moment of defiance, I was met with a sinister realization. my sister had begun to laugh alongside the very shadows I had tried to escape. The glade shook violently as more shadows coiled around us, uniting in their unholy mirth, and the creature loomed closer, grinning in its grotesque form. "Will you join the hunt?" The voice echoed, warped by the wind as echoes of laughter bounced off the trunks of ancient trees, and suddenly, just as all hope seemed lost, there came a blinding flash of light, erupting from deep within the forest, illuminating the obscured path into the abyss. The monstrous shadows recoiled in terror as the light grew brighter. In that harrowing instant, I felt my sister's hand touch mine, yet the connection felt ethereal. Her features blurred and flickered as if she were made of smoke, while the laughter around us crescendoed into a deafening roar. A thunderous crack startled the flora, but as I looked back into her eyes, only darkness stared back. "Run!" she shouted again, and I turned just in time to see the light swallow all around us, and an unfathomable weight pushed against my chest as I stood on the precipice of precipice, and then, everything went dark. The darkness came like a suffocating fog, enveloping me, dragging me deeper into an abyss where sound turned to silence and light faded into a memory. My heart pounded in my ears, thud, thud, like a funeral march echoing through a lonely crypt. I clawed at the air, feeling as if I were swimming in a viscous black sea that threatened to swallow me whole. Just when I thought it impossible to breathe, the thick murk lifted, revealing an alien landscape unlike anything I had encountered before. The ground was a patchwork of gnarled roots and pulsing fungi, emitting a faint bioluminescence that painted the surroundings in an unhealthy greenish hue. The trees here twisted unnaturally, their trunks crooked, limbs bent as if in pain, casting distorted shadows that danced across the ground. I forced myself to move, my body trembling from exertion as dread slithered through my veins. I couldn't stay here, I had to find my sister. The memory of her laughter, now mingled with the haunting cries of the forest, echoed relentlessly in my mind. Had I truly lost her to the shadows? Taking a deep breath, I pressed onward, driven by an insatiable need to uncover the truth. The whispers of ancient entities clawed at my consciousness, beckoning me towards a path flanked by trees that seemed alive, breathing, and watching. They loomed over me, their bark gnarled like twisted faces, each crevice whispering secrets I dared not comprehend, yet despite the terror wrapping around me like a shroud, I felt the spark of determination igniting once more. The pathway ahead glimmered with an eerie promise that cut through the despair, but with it came a haunting allure. As I walked on, the air thickened with the stench of decay, and I stumbled upon a clearing enveloped by thick mist, concealing something vile at its center. A stone altar lay there, slick with dark ichor, remnants of sacrifices past glistening under the dim light of the fungi. Surrounding it were offerings of twisted bone and shrunken, warped faces frozen in screams, as if frozen deeper than time itself. I staggered back, horror clawing at my chest. This was not merely a forest, it was a dwelling of malice, a twisted heart pulsing with dark memories and violent feasts. Instinctively, I turned to leave, but the air thrummed with a palpable tension. The shadows curled tighter around me, and a figure emerged from the mist, another spectre, but unlike the first, its form was hazy, clearly human yet marked by suffering. With hollow eyes and a twisted smile that wept crimson, it stretched out a hand towards me. "Did you come to join the hunt?" It croaked, laughter bubbling beneath the surface, a shattering reflection of madness. I watched, horrified, as the shadows behind it twisted into familiar figures, faces I had seen before, people lost to the darkness, now part of its eternal embrace, their eyes flooded with an unsettling awareness that chilled my blood. No. I screamed, stumbling back, the memories flashing within my mind, friends, family, each one swallowed by the shadows that called this forest home. Then, rising above the others, I saw my sister drifting closer, a silhouette ensnared by tendrils of darkness, her expression torn between longing and terror. "Help me," she mouthed silently, the shimmer in her eyes faltering before the weight of the entity around her. The laughter grew louder, drowning out my thoughts, taunting me, dragging me to the edge of despair. In a frenzy, I turned and raced back toward the gnarled trees, branches reaching like grasping fingers. They clawed at my skin, tearing through my clothes, but no pain could deter me now. I had to save her. She needed me. Yet, with each frantic breath, the forest conspired against me, the sounds warped, contorting into a cacophony of despairing cries mixed with bitter laughter that echoed from within the grove. The earth beneath me trembled, roots twisting and intertwining, attempting to tether me, claim another soul for their cruel appetite. That I felt something rush past Meth's shadows, moving, shifting rhythmically as they converged at the altar. It was a beckoning, luring me back to the heart of the darkness. But my sister stood at the threshold of the shadows, her face a mix of hope and horror, desperately pleading. "Don't surrender!" she shouted, reaching her hand toward me, the shadows weaving around her wrist like shackles, vying to pull her back into the depths. "You have to believe in the light." Then, just as I reached for her, I felt a chilling touch wrap around my throat, constricting with a deadly grip, dragging me into the abyss, the ghostly face of the specter looming ever closer. "Choice is but an illusion," it whispered, its breath cold as winter, a dread-laden finality creeping into my heart. "We are all hunted here, the light will never save you." With a final, desperate scream, I lunged forward, hoping to shatter the chains binding her to this nightmare. And in that act of defiance, I felt a surge, twisting the fabric of the very reality I stood upon, pulling me through the veil of shadows, spinning into an unraveling storm of light converging with the darkness. But as the shadows closed in, the laughter intensified into a relentless scream, and I was yanked from my sister's grasp just as a blinding radiance erupted. Everything went white, and the world around me fell into silence, yet a vicious chill coursed through me, promising that the hunt had just begun. But where had I gone? What remained of my sister? And then came the shattering realization, echoing through the void, an unfamiliar laughter entwined with my own, whispering from somewhere deep within me, a malevolent seed coaxing me to join the hunt once more. The world exploded back into view, but I was no longer in the forest. I stood in an endless expanse of desolation, a different sort of darkness cloaking me like a mantle. The ground was dry and cracked, stretching endlessly, each fissure appearing like the veins of a dying creature. Surrounding me were endless rows of malevolent trees, their gnarled branches clawing at the blackened sky, where thick clouds roiled with ominous electricity that flickered with unnatural pulses. Reports of other wanderers lingered in my mind, a restlessness creeping along the periphery of my thoughts. I had heard stories, awful tales of those who entered this place never truly escaping. A shiver ran down my spine, igniting the terror that had rested beneath the surface. Where was the light my sister had spoken of? With a desperate step, I followed a path that appeared, as if etched by some unseen hand, leading deeper into the heart of this dark nightmare. The silence was deafening. No rustle of leaves, no distant cries, only my heart hammering and the faintest echo of something that whispered from the shadows. As I moved, the air thickened, carrying with it a stench of rot and despair that turned my stomach. The laughter from moments before still echoed, an incessant reminder that I was not alone. A sudden movement caught my eye, and I turned quickly, my breath hitching in my throat. In the distance, silhouettes loomed, figures draped in tatters that writhed and twisted like smoke. They bounced between the trees, their movements erratic, devoid of reason. I could see glimpses of faces twisted in agony, their mouths moving in a silent chant, as if in a desperate plea for release. Why did they not notice me? Instinctively, I ducked behind a weathered tree, the bark against my back cold as ice. The figures drew closer, and the air grew heavy with a groaning sorrow, a pressure that threatened to collapse the very fabric of my mind. I held my breath, forcing myself to remain still, yet chills raced along my spine as dread bloomed within me, and then I saw a shadow unfurling from the core of that grotesque ballet. A colossal shape surged forth from the trees, a dark, elongated figure with limbs that stretched unnaturally. It moved with a predatory grace, eyes glowing a sickly yellow, surveying the tortured souls with a malevolence that sent chills scraping against my skin. "What do you seek, wanderer?" Its voice rumbled like thunder, echoing through the hollowed ground, vibrating in my bones. Instantly I knew it was not merely a creature of the forest, it was the very embodiment of this horror, a keeper of souls. I am looking for my sister." I stammered, unsure why I spoke aloud, knowing it could mark my end. I could feel the eyes of the shadowy figures shift towards me, and their chant grew louder, a feverish rhythm that sought to bind me. "Ah, but all who wander here lose something," and in turn gain shadows of their own, the creature replied, each word slithering through the air like smoke. What will you trade for her, little one? Your fear? Your desire? Or perhaps a piece of your soul? The ground quaked beneath me, a low rumbling that resonated with an austere finality. I felt a pull, a demanding weight in my chest, urging me to negotiate, to bargain for her life. But the choices it offered felt like barbed wire, and I was afraid to reach out. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, now intertwining with the howl of the wind, a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. Images of my sister flitted before me, her face blending with the specters, her smile a bittersweet memory. Would I be able to return to her once I gave a part of myself away? Could I stand losing more? I will give you nothing. I shouted, my voice cracking, proclaiming my defiance into the abyss. The figures paused, their chants faltering, confusion splintering through their ranks. For a moment, the colossal shadow seemed taken aback, its glow dimming slightly, yet before I could gather my resolve, the ground beneath me split open, an abyss yawning wide, and I teetered on the brink. The weight of everything me fears, choices, secrets burdened me, threatening to pull me down into an eternal torment. Freedom, dear wanderer, is a heavy price, the voice intoned, echoing with malicious delight. But perhaps you will find her among the lost. That I felt myself slipping, the blackness below ready to embrace me wholly. I screamed, reaching out for a handhold, but the void gaped wider, the faces of the lost screaming in laughter as my fate hung in the balance. And then I felt the grip of a cold hand clasp my wrist from behind me, the fingers brittle and unyielding as they dragged me back from the edge. Whirling around, my eyes met those of a familiar spectre, her face pale and shimmering, the fleeting vision of my sister. Run! She cried, her eyes wild with desperation. Let them have me. You must escape. But before I could respond, the shadows surged forward, pouring over her like a flood, merging her desperate cries into the cacophony of torment. That's it, the creature hissed triumphantly, the ground pulsing with its heartbeat. Join us. Your next step will seal your fate. And just like that, the darkness swallowed her, her eyes vanishing into the abyss. I was frozen, terror gripping my heart as I faced the dark figure, the laughter now blending into 1,000 whispers that urged me to choose. I took a shaky step back, teetering on the edge of despair. What would become of the last light I had left? But just as the shadows enveloped me, I felt something stir within. Power pulsed through my veins, a flicker of defiance igniting. I knew what I must do, what I was willing to fight against. But as I summoned my strength, the ground pulsed violently, and the malevolent entity loomed closer. The shadows around me writhed and twisted. Choose wisely, it growled, for in this world, light can turn to darkness before the blink of an eye. And then, everything shattered into a million splinters of deafening silence as I plunged further into the unknown, the last vestiges of my sister's plea mingling with the darkness, a question left dangling in the blackness, echoing through my soul. The ground swallowed me whole, and in that disorienting plunge, time seemed to warp, suspending me between the scream of my sister and the cold promise of the shadows. I landed hard on what felt like a stone floor, the sharp impact sending waves of pain radiating through my body. Yet, there was no time to dwell in the agony. I scrambled to my feet, my breath hitching as I looked around. That I stood in what appeared to be a cavernous hall, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The flickering glow of bioluminescent fungi flickered on stone walls, revealing twisted engravings of faces contorted in a grotesque gallery of those who had come before me. Each image seemed to pulse with life, as if they were witnesses to my descent into hell. That I in the center of the hall was an altar, made from the gnarled wood of the malevolent trees that surrounded this realm. The altar was strewn with offerings of bones and remnants of garments, the fabric tattered and stained, echoing stories of despair drowned in time. I felt a pull towards it, a whispering promise lurking beneath the surface, urging me to discover what lay within those offerings. That I stumbled closer, the dark whispers growing louder in my mind, a cacophony of voices battling for prominence. My sister's voice rose among them, laced with desperation and regret, begging me not to go further. Please. Don't listen to them. But I was compelled, a moth drawn to the flame. My fingers brushed against the edges of the altar, and in that moment, a rush of memories crashed upon Mimi's sister's laughter, her warmth, her hands clasping mine during the harshest storms of childhood. I could almost feel her presence enveloping me, soothing yet urgent. Then, I sensed a shift in the air, like a breath taken deep before a storm. The shadows coiled around the altar, pulsing with a life of their own, and a figure began to emerge from their depths. It was the creature, its elongated body twisting grotesquely as it took form, limbs flaring like jagged lightning cutting through the fog of despair. Those yellow eyes locked onto mine, drawing me closer into its chilling embrace. "Foolish child," it hissed, every syllable tinged with malice. "You think you can reclaim what is lost? You think you can escape the darkness?" The room around me began to warp, the walls closing in, pressing against my lungs. I took a step back, my heart racing. I needed a way out, a sign, something to defend against this evil. "Your sister made a choice," the creature continued, its voice like ice dripping from a stalactite, a sonic tease of triumph. "Oh, the sweetness of sacrifice! Her essence mingles with the shadows now. You would have to give more than just your fear to save her, you must embrace what you deny. Will you join her, or will you fight against the inevitable?" In that moment, a choice unfurled before me. The offerings on the altar seemingly shifted, revealing a glimmer beneath the detritus. I bent down, my fingers trembling as I unearthed a small, tarnished locket. It was the very one my sister had worn, one I thought lost in the days of our childhood. I could feel her spirit resonating through the cold metal, with it came the surge of memories, our shared secrets, dreams, and the bond that tied our souls together. But there was something darker lurking within those memories, mocking me with flashes of betrayal and old fears I had buried deep. "What will you give up?" The entity growled, its presence looming over me like an impending storm. "For every piece of light, there must be shadow. Choose your trade." It felt as though the walls were closing in on me, my breath escaping in short gasps. I clutched the locket tighter, recollections swirling as if eager to unveil what I had kept hidden, a fear I had never acknowledged. I battled with the urge to scream, to retaliate, yet there was a deeper urgency I couldn't shake. The thought that I might lose my sister forever gnawed at me, the idea of her essence bound to suffering too great for words. Suddenly, the air vibrated with a sinister energy, shaking the altar as shadows writhed and danced around me. "Haven't you ever wanted to be free from your past? Embrace your darkness. Let go of your guilt, and you can save her." My heart raced. I could feel that part of me stirring, that desire for liberation, freedom from the weight of memories that haunted me. But was I willing to barter with the void? "I will not lose myself," I cried out defiantly, clutching the locket against my chest. A flash of light burst from it, illuminating the darkness pressing against me, pushing those malevolent shadows back momentarily. And in that moment of defiance, the laughter returned, more piercing than before, reverberating off the cavern walls. "You think your light can protect you? Emotions can become shackles too." The hall around me trembled, and the entity's eyes narrowed dangerously, swirling with rage. "You have chosen, then. But choice comes with consequence." Before I could react, the ground shifted violently beneath my feet, and the shadows surged toward me, stretching like sinister tendrils. The laughter transformed into a chorus of wails, and the walls began to crack, fissures opening wide like gaping maws hungry for more, and then, a sound filled the air, a desperate scream, unmistakably my sister's. It echoed through the cavern, reverberating in my soul, tearing through the veil of my resolve. "Help me!" A fresh wave of terror coursed through me, binding me in place, as the entity moved in, ready to consume both me and my hopes. Just then, the locket in my grasp radiated blinding energy, illuminating everything in its glow before spiraling into darkness. I seized the moment to scream, "I'll find you!" As I was engulfed by shadows, my body swept away like a leaf caught in a tempest. But as the darkness claimed me, a final vision flashed before my eyes, a glimpse of my sister, not in pain but standing tall, a defiant smile gracing her lips. "Come find me." And just like that, the darkness imploded around me, detonating into a chaos that left me wondering whether what lay ahead was salvation or the completion of my own downfall. The last echoing thought in my mind was the realization that perhaps my journey into this horror had just begun. The shadows enveloped me wholly, pulling me into a void that was both suffocating and liberating. I felt weightless, suspended in a realm where the familiar chaos of fear and regret twisted into something indescribable. But before I could grasp what was happening, the crushing sensation of earth beneath me returned, as tangible as the pale light of a full moon breaking through the trees that I was back. Or so I thought. The cavern had faded, but the air was thick with the miasma of decay, and the trees loomed dangerously close, their grotesque forms twisting into shapes that mocked the last vestiges of sanity. The forest had changed, its edges were jagged, and the once familiar paths were now unrecognizable. Mariana. I called out, my voice a mere whisper against the oppressive silence that had fallen. As I stumbled through the dense thicket, each step felt heavier, as if the earth itself was trying to reclaim me back into the darkness I had barely escaped. The silence sang, a haunting melody of my sister's voice layered beneath it. "I'm still here," it teased, intertwining with the rustle of leaves and the screech of unseen creatures. I clawed at the earth, each desperate motion eliciting a low laugh from the specters surrounding me. I pressed on, visions of Mariana dancing just out of reach, her silhouette beckoning me deeper into the heart of the woodland. The branches scratched at my skin as I moved, drawing dark crimson lines that merged with the shadows, almost welcoming me back into their fold. Yet every inch felt like a betrayal against my defiance. A clearing opened before me, bathed in an unsettling silver light. The ground was covered in what appeared to be a thick layer of fog, but as I stepped closer, I realized it was something far more sinister, an undulating sea of faces, all twisted in agony and despair, their mouths moving soundlessly in a chorus of silent screams. I staggered back, horror building within me as dizzying memories flickered through my mind, every heartbeat corresponding to a pulse in the ground beneath my feet, calling to the horror that lay in wait beneath the surface. These were the souls trapped within this malevolent forest, the very echoes of those who had come before me, still trying to claw their way back to the light. "Are you ready to join us?" A voice erupted, startling me. It was a shadow of a man draped in rags that swirled around him like the forest itself. His eyes were sunken, yet glowed with an unholy light that sent a chill down my spine. "You don't belong outside anymore. You're one of us now." I turned to run, but found myself enwrapped by an unseen force, my limbs refusing to obey as my mind reeled with panic. "No! I want surrender!" I screamed, thrashing against the invisible bindings. The man merely watched, amusement dancing in his hollow gaze. "You don't understand," he said, stepping closer. Each shuffle was mirrored by the forest, twisting and curling around him like a wisp of smoke. "You are already part of this place. Your sister's waiting for you. Where is she?" I shouted, desperation clinging to every word. "What have you done to her?" "Nothing that hasn't already been done," he replied cryptically, his voice layering over itself like echoes in a cave. "She chose the shadows, just as you will. The dark calls to parts of you that want to break free, want to be reborn among the lost." As if compelled by his words, memories of my fears surged forth me, insecurities, my failures, the crushing burden of familial expectations. The forest whispered them back at me, wrapping around my throat. "Let them go. Join her." In that moment, the fog thickened, coalescing into forms more sinister. A parade of shadows danced toward me, faces turning toward the light and then curling in laughter at my plight. I could see in their eyes not just suffering, but a twisted longing for acceptance, as if inviting me to cast aside my humanity in exchange for something unfathomable. "You'll be reunited. You won't suffer anymore," the specter urged, his voice now thick with urgency. "Feel it. Embrace who you are." The desperation clawed at my insides, the pull to surrender became unbearable, and I found myself staggering back, vision swimming. I had so much to lose, yet at that moment something felt beyond reach. My sister's laughter rang again, now laced with urgency, pulling me from the depths of the shadow seduction. "Find me. You must choose. But would I be choosing my sister, or would I be walking directly into the clutches of this darkness? The realization struck me like icy water, the line between saving her and losing myself blurred with every heartbeat. And then, as if sensing my wavering resolve, the shadows surged forward, enveloping me in darkness thicker than the night, drowning me in their shrieks of enticement. Just before I succumbed, I tore myself free of their grasp and looked around frantically, but, in that dark moment, the ground beneath me gave way. I fell, twisted roots entwining around my ankles, dragging me into the depths below where midnight drowned the sun entirely. In those fleeting seconds, I caught a glimpse of her, a glistening figure standing at the edge of an abyss, her outstretched hand beckoning me forward, a serene smile playing on her lips. Yet, even in that moment of panic, the air shifted once more, and I understood, I was not the one she wanted to find. I was just another soul waiting to be lost. With a tiny spark of lucidity, I howled into the inky void, "Mariana! Don't give in. Fight!" But her smile remained, haunting and unyielding, as the darkness swallowed me whole, leaving nothing but my voice echoing against the unforgiving void that now surrounded us both. The last distant call I heard was her whisper, a fragile echo that now promised the impossibility of our reunion, as everything dissolved into silence. I woke with a start, gasping for air, the scent of damp earth and decay clinging to me like a shroud. Had I truly escaped? Or was this merely the wood's cruel trick, lulling me back into their embrace? A frigid wind cut through the air as I stumbled to my feet, the oppressive silence gnawing at my senses. I looked around, desperate for clarity, but the shadows shrouded everything in a foreboding haze. A familiar whisper beckoned from the depths, chilling my bones. "Help me!" The voice of my sister drew closer, warping the very fabric of my sanity. I turned, searching the gloom, knowing this was a game I could not afford to lose. "Mariana!" I shouted, my voice echoing back distorted, a taunt from the trees. The woods craved my despair, feeding on every ounce of hope I clung to. Each twisted branch and flickering shadow felt alive, writhing in delight at my struggle. "Embrace what haunts you," a voice murmured from the darkness, laced with malice. "The past calls for resolution, dear wanderer. She is lost, just as you are." My heart thundered in my chest as I realized the truth. The trees spoke not with the voices of the lost but of myself, my buried fears and regrets clawing their way to the surface. The shadows hungered for acknowledgement, a sweet surrender from the tormented soul that dwelled within me. "No!" I screamed, dashing forward as chains of doubt gripped my ankles. With every step, the ground roared in defiance. As I plunged deeper into the woods, the air thickened, smothering my thoughts with the weight of sorrow. Yet the whispers grew louder, merging into a cacophony of agony and anguish, ensnaring me tighter. "Find her, save her," they hissed, entangling my resolve. And through the chaos, I caught sight of her, Mariana, standing at the edge of a clearing beyond the tangled branches, bathed in an unnatural light that seeped through the murk. "Please," I begged, my heart racing. "Don't be lost." She turned, her face radiant yet haunting, eyes shimmering with an otherworldly glow. "You have to understand," she replied, her voice akin to a haunting melody that wrapped around my heart. "You cannot save me unless you confront the darkness within you. Then let's do it together." I reached for her, desperation flooding my veins. Yet the shadows lunged forward, clawing at my ankles, dragging me toward the depths of despair. "No!" I screamed, tearing myself free of their grasp, fighting against the pull of the abyss. But even as I shouted for her, she stepped back into the shadows, swallowed whole by the encroaching darkness. The sacrifice had been made. She belonged to the woods now, an eternal prisoner, a part of the curse that bound these haunted lands. I was too late. I fell to my knees, the chill of the darkness creeping into my bones, and the specters emerged around me, their laughter echoing like thunder in the silence. "Join us, join the hunt," they sang sweetly, an irresistible lullaby of despair that echoed through the trees and seeped into my very soul. A hollow ache settled within me as I clasped the locket tightly in my hand, feeling its edges press against my palm like a tether to the remnants of our shared past. I realized the truth: the hunt was never merely about my sister, it was about me, and the darkness that slumbered within. The forest craved the shadows I had buried deep within myself. In that moment, I made a choice not dictated by despair but by the flicker of light that remained deep within me. I will not be lost. I cried out, pulling from the depths of my spirit a strength I thought extinguished. The shadows shrieked and recoiled, the laughter fading into a chilling silence. I will embrace my darkness, but you will not have me. I roared, the locket shining bright, illuminating the space around me. A surge of energy coursed through my veins, and I felt the spirits of the forest shift, their anger palpable as I summoned the warmth of my sister's love, the memories of our childhood swirling in a tempest of defiance. As the shadows converged, I thrust the locket deep into the earth, a beacon of light piercing through the darkness. May this serve as a protection for all lost souls. I shouted, forcing the memories of love and laughter into the ground. This belongs to us. You cannot take it back. The earth trembled, a shockwave reverberating through the forest as roots erupted from the ground, reaching out to ensnare the shadows lurking at the periphery. A bright light engulfed the clearing, forcing the darkness to retreat, shrieking in fury as the forest heaved in response to my defiance. Yet, as the smoke cleared, reality cracked like ice beneath my feet. A figure emerged from the shadows, my sister standing amidst the wraiths, eyes filled with warmth yet twisted by sorrow. You should have joined us, she whispered, her voice now layered with the haunting trills of the forest. It could have been everlasting. In the fleeting moment of shared connection, understanding dawned within me. You're still here, but you've changed. I felt the weight of her metamorphosis, the forest clutching at her as both guardian and captor. Mariana, you don't have to lose yourself. I reached out, but the shadows held her tight, their whispers entwining with her essence. With each heartbeat, the delicate balance shifted. My sister's anguish pierced my soul, a mirror reflecting the shadows I had tried to escape. Help me! She cried, and just like that, the world distorted, light and dark tangled together like the branches overhead. Then, I understood. I won't let you suffer. I cried, tears of anguish staining my cheeks. I would fight not just for her but for the lost ones, for every soul entwined within the shadows of this malevolent place. The hunt was endless, but it would not end with me. It would not take her. As I turned to face the encroaching shadows, I felt within me the ancient power of the forest, the light and dark entwined, an eternal dance of life and death. Join your hunt then. I screamed into the void, the intensity of my emotions pouring forth. You will not take her. In that moment, a crack echoed through the air, the pulse of the forest sinking with my heartbeat. The shadows shrieked once more before collapsing inward, drawn by the locket and the memories imbued within it. Was it pain or a promise? I would never know, and as the tendrils of darkness closed in once more, I caught a final glimpse of Hermes' sister, reaching out with fragile fingertips, her essence intertwined with the shadows, a haunting confidence in her eyes. I'll be waiting, she whispered, a fragment of hope woven into despair. And then, silence fell like a blanket as the world around me fractured and twisted, plunging me into darkness. I fell, deeper and deeper through the grief and sorrow, through the laughter and love, through a haunted dreamscape forged from despair. But even in that suffocating darkness, a thought flickered, a primal instinct awakening within me, embracing the chaos, whispering the truth. The woods would never truly let me go, and the hunt had only just begun. With that chilling awareness, the shadows embraced me with open arms, welcoming me back into their eternal fold, and for the first time, I felt the thrill of the hunt coursing through my veins.